My name is Sean Ryan and this is a basic introduction to BIML. BIML stands for Business Intelligence Markup Language. It's a free language created by Varigance. Go and look at their website. There's loads of documentation, examples, API references, and there's a BIML community where loads of people have contributed loads of material. So why would we use BIML to create integration services packages? Integration services is really good at sizing a memory pipeline and pumping data between two different servers. What it's not so good at is metadata driving that process. So in a sense, it does it like really well because it pre-compiles the metadata, which then can't be changed during runtime. And when we talk about metadata, we're talking about the names of databases, the names of files, the names of tables, the names of columns, and their data types. So what this leads to when we're creating ETL loads with integration services with the tools that Microsoft have given us is that we end up doing loads and loads of repetition of package patterns to perform similar tasks on different sets of metadata. I liken this to like driving down a motorway in a car. You'll be driving for a couple of hours, but just sort of zone out. You're still focused on the road. You're still functioning with at a certain level, but you kind of suddenly come around a few minutes later and you've sort of missed the last 5 or 6 miles that you've covered. And it's kind of the same when you're sort of creating packages or doing manual tasks. So you've got 50 staging packages to create. You might get 5 or 6 in, and then you'll just suddenly sort of zone out. You're still doing the task, and it's at this point where we introduce bugs and flaws in the system. And wherever we have repetitive tasks that are sort of commodity tasks or low skilled tasks or fit a certain formula, then it's much better to get a computer to do them. Computers are really good at doing those tasks really fast, much faster than people can do them, and more consistently. And this is what BIML allows us to do. It allows us to script out those tasks and repeat them over a set of metadata really efficiently and really robustly, giving the same result every single time. Right, so on to the first demo. All we're going to do is create a BIML script that creates a package. This is a Visual Studio 2012. We've got BIDS Helper installed, which means we get BIML with BIDS Helper. It's a free language that Varigance created and put out there, and it comes with BIDS Helper. We've got an integration services project here that we created, and all we're going to do is that we're going to right click here and add a new BIML file. So we get our BIML file that appears in the miscellaneous folder. I'm going to rename that to create package. And when we open this, it's basically just XML, pretty much like HTML is. We've got a root element there, and we're just going to type out and script out our package by adding further elements, nested elements, much like we do in HTML. And at the end, what we can do is we right click our package and generate sys packages, but we won't do that yet because we've not created it yet. So the first thing we're going to put in is our connections, just like you do in a sys project. We put our project level connections in, and we'll see that the IntelliSense on this is pretty good. BIML's criticised quite often for the language being awkward, or there's a learning curve, the documentation is not great, etc, etc. But actually the IntelliSense is pretty good. It gives you pretty much everything that you need whilst you're typing. So if I type the beginning of an element here, it gives me a complete list of elements that is valid to put in at this point. And I know that I kind of want to create connections, so I can see it there. So the IntelliSense is like a great help on this. And again, so within my nested connections element, I want to put my connection, so I can again use the IntelliSense. And then we got our connection object here, and as soon as I press space, I get a list of the attributes that I can put in there. So obviously I'm going to want to put in a connection string, and I'm going to want to give it a name. So we'll call this AdventureWorks. In my demo, I'm going to use AdventureWorks. I will use AdventureWorks in that demo. And the connection string I'm going to copy from somewhere else. close our element. And we want to kind of tell this that we want to create it, so we can create connections at a package level, or we can create them at a project level. So we want to create this at a project level because we're using 2012. Perhaps we wouldn't if we're using 2008. Package level connections are better in 2008. And again, we get the IntelliSense telling us what the valid values are that we can put in this attribute. We're going to want two connections because we're going to move data between two different databases on the same server. And this one would be our stage database, which is BIML demo. So next we've got our connections. The next thing we're going to want is our packages. So again, the element packages, fairly straightforward. Package, again, fairly straightforward. So what I'm kind of trying to illustrate here is that it's all massively intuitive. There's nothing really that complicated here. It's not like programming an object-oriented language, or like C# or C++ or Java. It's all pretty intuitive. And I actually prefer programming BIML than actually using the bits designer now, because all the properties that I need to get access to and basically use are just right here. I can type quicker than I can use my mouse, and I've learnt loads about integration services because basically you get to see all the properties that are available, and you start to sort of learn more about what you can do with sys and what properties are available and what you can tweak and what you can't tweak. So we're going to give our package a name. And all we're going to do in this package is basically bulk load data from our Adventure Works database to our stage database. So the constraint mode is basically linear or parallel. So what this is doing is kind of designing the workflow for us. So on our task designer in integration services, we normally draw arrows between tasks to decide how the workflow is going to go. So BIML will do this workflow automatically for us, and all we have to tell it is, do we want the workflow to go in a sequence, or do we want it to go in parallel? And then basically what that means is that if we want stuff to work in sequence and parallel at various different workflows, we have to use containers, which is fine because we should be using containers anyway. And we're just going to create a linear one. Very straightforward workflow. And within a package we have tasks. The first task we want to put in is that we want to truncate the table before we bulk load it. So we want to execute a SQL task. Give it a name. We have to give it a connection name. And just by the way, if we didn't do that, if we didn't give it a connection name, it's kind of expecting one, you kind of get this blue line. So mouse over that blue line and it tells us what we haven't given that's mandatory to put in there. Connection names or stage. The SQL is going to be direct input for this one. All we're going to do is truncate table. After we truncate the table, we're going to put in a data flow to load our table. In data flow we have transformations. Again, all fairly straightforward and obvious. And within our transformation we need a data source, and we're going to do an OLEDB source. We have to give that a connection name, obviously. And again we're going to do direct input. I'm going to leave the SQL not indented, so I'm going to leave it right up against the margin. Why is it will become apparent when we see the package that gets created. And then that's going to go to a destination, an OLEDB destination. And that's going to be on our stage connection. And we're going to load this into an external table. That just means table reference in our database, and that's asking for table attribute. You just put in the name. So we've got an OLEDB source, we've got our OLEDB destination, so there's no data flow between them, so we need to create that reference. And the way we do this in here is we say the input path, output name path, output path name rather, sorry. What we do is we take the name of the OLEDB source, and we take the output. So that didn't take long to type. I could see all the IntelliSense helped me all the way through. It wasn't too complicated. It's all fairly intuitive. And now we can right click our BIML, generate sys package. Lo and behold, you've created our connections. It's created our connections for us, and it's created our package. And when we look in here, we see that we've got the truncate table, we've got our data flow, selecting from Adventure, it's a SQL that we put in. I didn't indent it in the BIML because if I had indented it, it would have been all skewed within this window and it wouldn't have been very readable. And now we can execute that. Bunch of builders. This is the protection level, so this is a bit of a gotcha with new projects. So BIML will create this package with a protection level, and the project protection level is different, and that's what it's moaning about. So we just need to change the project protection level and say don't save sensitive data. And we're good to go. And that's loaded 504 rows between our source database and our stage database. Okay, so nothing that special there really. All we've done basically is used a markup language to create a package. We still had to do a manual task. So the next demo we're going to show how to pump metadata into this script so that we can use this to automatically create any number of packages based on table metadata.